Hey, Hunter and Heather. This is Sue Bastiani from my new state of Texas. I really miss Oregon already, but I'm glad I can still listen to you no matter where I am. Have a great day.
Why, thank you for that, Sue. It's great to hear your voice. And let me just say that Oregon's loss is Texas's gain. And thank you much for leaving us a voicemail. And before we jump into the podcast, let me just remind you all that you can do that too. Just head on over to the webpage, click on that voicemail link, and give it a go. Well, hey, welcome everybody, and I'm so glad you're here. The day is September the 15th, and my name is Hunter, and we are about to do that thing that we do every day. We're about to spend some time now in God's Word, and we're going to let His Word spend some time on us. And oh, how we need that, no doubt about that. Today, my friends, we are in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 40 and 41. Then we go on to Psalm 128, and then we finish in Revelation chapter 21. Wow. Father, help us to see. We've come. Some of us have barely made it here, but we're here. And we are ready to hear. Help us now. Ezekiel 40. On April 28th, during the 25th year of our captivity, 14 years after the fall of Jerusalem, the Lord took hold of me. In a vision from God, He took me to the land of Israel and set me down on a very high mountain. From there, I could see toward the south what appeared to be a city. As He brought me near, I saw a man whose face shone like bronze standing beside a gateway entrance. He was holding in his hand a linen measuring cord and a measuring rod. He said to me, "Son of man, watch and listen. Pay close attention to everything I show you. You have been brought here so I can show you many things. Then you will return to the people of Israel and tell them everything you have seen." I could see a wall completely surrounding the temple area. The man took a measuring rod that was 10.5 feet long and measured the wall, and the wall was 10.5 feet thick and 10.5 feet high. Then he went over to the eastern gateway. He climbed the steps and measured the threshold of the gateway. It was 10.5 feet front to back. There were guard alcoves on each side built into the gateway passage. Each of these alcoves was 10.5 feet square, with a distance between them of 8 3/4 feet along the passage wall. The gateway's inner threshold, which led to the entry room at the inner end of the gateway passage, was 10.5 feet front to back. He also measured the entry room of the gateway. It was 14 feet across, with supporting columns 3.5 feet thick. This entry room was at the inner end of the gateway structure facing toward the temple. There were 3 guard alcoves on each side of the gateway passage. Each had the same measurements, and the dividing walls separating them were also identical. The man measured the gateway entrance, which was 17.5 feet wide at the opening and 22 3/4 feet wide at the gateway passage. In front of each of the guard alcoves was a 21-inch curb. The alcoves themselves were 10.5 feet on each side. Then he measured the entire width of the gateway, measuring the distance between the back walls of facing guard alcoves. This distance was 43 3/4 feet. He measured the dividing walls all along the inside of the gateway up to the entry room of the gateway. This distance was 105 feet. The full length of the gateway passage was 87.5 feet from one end to the other. There were recessed windows that narrowed inward through the walls of the guard alcoves and their dividing walls. There were also windows in the entry rooms. The surface of the dividing walls were decorated with carved palm trees. Then the man brought me through the gateway into the outer courtyard of the temple. A stone pavement ran along the walls of the courtyard, and 30 rooms were built against the walls, opening into the pavement. This pavement flanked the gates and extended out from the walls into the courtyard the same distance as the gateway entrance. This was the lower pavement. Then the man measured across the temple's outer courtyard between the outer and inner gateways. The distance was 175 feet. The man measured the gateway on the north just like the one on the east. Here, too, there were 3 guard alcoves on each side, with dividing walls and an entry room. All the measurements matched those of the east gateway. The gateway passage was 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide between the back walls of the facing guard alcoves. The windows, the entry room, and the palm tree decorations were identical to those on the east gateway. There were 7 steps leading up to the gateway entrance, and the entry room was at the inner end of the gateway passage, here on the north side just as on the east. There was another gateway leading to the temple's inner courtyard directly opposite this outer gateway. The distance between the 2 gateways was 175 feet. Then the man took me around to the south gateway and measured its various parts, and they were exactly the same as the others. It had windows along the walls as the others did, and there was an entry room where the gateway passage opened into the outer courtyard. And like the others, the gateway passage was 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide between the back walls of facing guard alcoves. This gateway also had a stairway of 7 steps leading up to it, and an entry room at the inner end, and palm tree decorations along the dividing walls. And here again, directly opposite the outer gateway, was another gateway that led into the inner courtyard. The distance between the 2 gateways was 175 feet. Then the man took me to the south gateway leading into the inner courtyard. He measured it, and it had the same measurements as the other gateways. Its guard alcoves, dividing walls, and entry room were the same size as those in the others. It also had windows along its walls and in the entry room, and like the others, the gateway passage was 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. The entry rooms of the gateways leading into the inner courtyard were 14 feet across and 43 3/4 feet wide. The entry room to the south gateway faced into the inner courtyard. It had palm tree decorations on its columns, and there were 8 steps leading to the entrance. Then he took me to the east gateway leading to the inner courtyard. He measured it, and it had the same measurements as the other gateways. Its guard alcoves, dividing walls, and entry rooms were the same size as those of the others, and there were windows along the walls and in the entry room. The gateway passage measured 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. Its entry room faced into the outer courtyard. It had palm tree decorations on its columns, and there were 8 steps leading to its entrance. Then he took me around to the north gateway leading to the inner courtyard. He measured it, and it had the same measurements as the other gateways. The guard alcoves, dividing walls, and entry room of this gateway had the same measurements as in the others, and the same window arrangements. The gateway passage measured 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. Its entry room faced into the outer courtyard, and it had palm tree decorations on the columns. There were 8 steps leading to its entrance. A door led from the entry room to one of the inner gateways into a side room, where the meat for the sacrifice was washed. On each side of this entry room were 2 tables, where the sacrificial animals were slaughtered for the burnt offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings. Outside the entry room, on each side of the stairs, going up to the north entrance, were 2 more tables. There were 8 tables in all, 4 inside and 4 outside, where the sacrifices were cut up and prepared. There was also 4 tables of finished stone for preparation of the burnt offerings, each 31.5 inches square and 21 inches high. On these tables were placed the butchering knives and other implements for slaughtering the sacrificial animals. There were hooks, each 3 inches long, fastened all around the foyer walls. The sacrificial meat was laid on the tables. Inside the inner courtyard were 2 rooms, one beside the north gateway facing south and the other beside the south gateway facing north. And the man said to me, "The room beside the north inner gate is for the priest who supervise the temple maintenance. The room beside the south inner gate is for the priests in charge of the altar, the descendants of Zadok. For they alone of all the Levites may approach the Lord to minister to him." Then the man measured the inner courtyard, and it was a square, 175 feet wide and 175 feet across. The altar stood in the courtyard in front of the temple. Then he brought me to the entry room of the temple. He measured the walls on either side of the opening of the entry room, and they were 8 3/4 feet thick. The entry itself was 24.5 feet wide, and the walls on each side of the entrance were an additional 5¼ feet long. The entry room was 35 feet wide and 21 feet deep. There were 10 steps leading up to it with a column on each side. Ezekiel 41. After that, the man brought me into the sanctuary of the temple. He measured the walls on either side of its doorway, and they were 10½ feet thick. The doorway was 17½ feet wide, and the walls on each side of it were 8¾ feet long. The sanctuary itself was 70 feet long and 35 feet wide. Then he went beyond the sanctuary into the inner room. He measured the walls on either side of its entrance, and they were 3½ feet thick. The entrance was 10½ feet wide, and the walls on each side of the entrance were 12¼ feet long. The inner room of the sanctuary was 35 feet long and 35 feet wide. This, he told me, is the most holy place. Then he measured the walls of the temple, and it was 10½ feet thick. There was a row of rooms along the outside wall. Each room was 7 feet wide. These side rooms were built in 3 levels, one above the other, with 30 rooms on each level. The supports for these side rooms rested on the exterior ledge of the temple wall. They did not extend into the wall. Each level was wider than the one below it, corresponding to the narrowing of the temple wall as it rose higher. A stairway led up from the bottom level through the middle level to the top level. I saw that the temple was built on a terrace, which provided a foundation for the side rooms. This terrace was 10½ feet high. The outer wall of the temple side rooms was 8¾ feet thick. This left an open area between these side rooms and the row of rooms along the outer wall of the inner courtyard. This open area was 35 feet wide, and it went all the way around the temple. 2 doors opened from the side rooms into the terrace yard, which was 8¾ feet wide. One door faced north and the other south. A large building stood on the west, facing the temple courtyard. It was 122½ feet wide and 157½ feet long, and its walls were 8¾ feet thick. Then the man measured the temple, and it was 175 feet long. The courtyard around the building, including its walls, was an additional 175 feet in length. The inner courtyard to the east of the temple was also 175 feet wide. The building to the west, including its 2 walls, was also 175 feet wide. The sanctuary, the inner room, and the entry room of the temple were all paneled with wood, as were the frames of the recessed windows. The inner walls of the temple were paneled with wood. Above and below the windows, the space above the door leading into the inner room and the walls inside and out were also paneled. All the walls were decorated with carvings of cherubim, each with 2 faces, and there were carvings of a palm tree between each of the cherubim. One face, that of a man, looked toward the palm tree on one side. The other face, that of a young lion, looked toward the palm tree on the other side. The figures were carved all along the inside of the temple, from the floor to the top of the walls, including the outer wall of the sanctuary. There were square columns at the entrance of the sanctuary, and the ones at the entrance of the most holy place were similar. There was an altar made of wood 5½ feet high and 3½ feet across. Its corners, base, and sides were all made of wood. This, the man told me, is the table that stands in the Lord's presence. Both the sanctuary and the most holy place had double doorways, each with 2 swinging doors. The doors leading into the sanctuary were decorated with carved cherubim and palm trees, just as the walls, and there was a wooden roof at the front of the entry room to the temple. On both sides of the entry room were recessed windows decorated with carved palm trees. The side rooms along the outside wall also had roofs. Psalm 128. A song for pilgrims ascending to Jerusalem. How joyful are those who fear the Lord, all who follow his ways. You will enjoy the fruit of your labor. How joyful and prosperous you will be. Your wife will be like a fruitful grapevine flourishing within your home. Your children will be like vigorous young olive trees as they sit around your table. That is the Lord's blessing for those who fear him. May the Lord continually bless you from Zion. May you see Jerusalem prosper as long as you live. May you live to enjoy your grandchildren. May Israel live in peace. Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever." And the one sitting on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." And then he said to me, "Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true." And he also said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, to all who are thirsty. I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. But cowards, unbelievers, the corrupt, murderers, the immoral, those who practice witchcraft, idol worshippers, and all liars, their fate is in the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death." Then one of the 7 angels who held the 7 bowls containing the 7 last plagues came to me and said, "Come with me. I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." So he took me in the Spirit to a great high mountain, and he showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God and sparkled like a precious stone, like jasper, as clear as crystal. The city wall was broad and high, with 12 gates guarded by 12 angels, and the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were written on the gates. There were 3 gates on each side, east, north, south, and west. The wall of the city had 12 foundation stones, and on them were written the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. The angel who had talked to me held in his hand a gold measuring stick to measure the city, its gates, and its wall. When he measured it, he found it was a square as wide as it was long. In fact, its length and width and height were each 1,400 miles. Then he measured the walls and found them to be 216 feet thick, according to the human standard used by the angel. The wall was made of jasper, and the city was pure gold, as clear as glass. The wall of the city was built on foundation stones, inlaid with 12 precious stones. The first was jasper, the second sapphire, the third agate, the fourth emerald, the fifth onyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th jacinth, the 12th amethyst. The 12 gates were made of pearls, each gate with a single pearl, and the main street was pure gold, as clear as glass. I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. And the city has no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. The nations will walk in its light, and the kings of the world will enter the city in all their glory. Its gates will never be closed at the end of the day, because there is no night there, and all the nations will bring their glory and honor into this city. Nothing evil will be allowed to enter, nor anyone who practices shameful idolatry and dishonesty, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. And now may the author of our faith give his blessing to the reading of his word. Amen. The epicenter of the story is gone. The temple and the altar are gone. Even the sun and the moon are gone. The instruments of time are no more. The temple is no more. The story of rebellion, darkness, suffering, and death is no more. And now John says, It's all gone. All the stories are dissolving into him. The temple, the sacrifices, they were always and only pointing us to him. The story of God's unfailing love is reaching its apex. John says, I saw no temple in the city, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple, and the city has no need of sun or moon, for the glory of God illuminates the city, and the Lamb is its light. He is our light, and he is our life. All the stories are eclipsed by his light, and what remains is his life, the Lamb's book of life. And this story of light and life have only just begun. There's more to come. You have been woven into his story of light and love. He has written you into its pages, and you share in his life now, abiding in him. So join with him, participate with him in the life that you are always made for. You can radiate that light that's in you right now. You can let it shine through acts of kindness, through generosity, through acts of service. You can radiate the life of God today. As you follow our rabbi, he will show you the way of life. That's the prayer that I have for my own soul. That's the prayer that I have for my family, for my wife and my daughters and my son. And that's the prayer that I have for you. May it be so.
Hello, Hunter.
Hey, Hunter.
Hello, Brother Hunter.
Hello, Hunter. This is Pauline Loney in Sherbrooke, Quebec.
Hi, Hunter. It's Robert Benning. I'm just from Edison, New Jersey. I'm just saying hello.
Hey, Hunter. This is Aaron Clifford calling. I'm calling from Beijing, China.
Hi, this is Marie from New Zealand.
Hi, Hunter. This is Francis Bala from Sharon, Massachusetts.
Hello, Hunter. This is Melody from Switzerland.
Hello, Hunter and Heather. This is Mallory from Warren, Michigan.
Hey, Hunter and Heather. It is David Nephew. How are you doing?
I so love hearing your voices. I so love thinking about all of us doing this together. That is just so stinking cool in my book. You know, we don't have to do this alone, and so many in this world are walking a lonely path. Loneliness is a big deal in this world. And if there's a little thing that we can do, like show up here each day and maybe even hear another person's voice, to be reminded that I'm not alone, to be encouraged with the presence of God in your life, well, maybe that could make a difference. Maybe that could help us not only to cope with and deal with our own loneliness, maybe that'll give us eyes to see the people around us, the paths that they are on. And maybe somewhere in there, there's more opportunity for us to connect. And that is a great hope. That is something that we can work toward. And we can bring before the Lord and see what he does. Well, hey, so glad you're here. So glad that we can share. So glad that this thing happens between us each day. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate you. And what do you say we keep at it? You know, here, I think it's the 24th or 23rd. I always forget the day. But here, coming up soon, will be the anniversary date for the DRB. And that'll be 9 years. Incredible. 9 years of doing this every day. And that does not happen without you. So thank you. All the many out there who have partnered with and participated and joined in and prayed and encouraged and showed up in small ways and big ways, in lots of ways. Man, I'm so grateful. Well, tomorrow's a new day. I plan on being here together with you. Until that time, let's go forward in God's joy. Let's let His joy be our strength. And let us always remember this, that you are loved and you are not alone. No doubt about it. Alrighty, I'll talk to you again tomorrow. You guys take care.